The 6th of June, 1944. Dawn breaks gray and heavy over the coast of Normandy. The sea churned white by thousands of men in a craft pressing towards the shore. Somewhere offshore beach, a squat, angular tank grinds down a ramp, water shooting off its gun. Mounted on its turret is something unlike any conventional gun. Short, thick, almost comically stubby, jutting from the armor like a length of drain pipe. The men crouched inside call it, with the particular black humor of soldiers, the Flying Dustbin. To the German defenders watching from their concrete bunkers along the Atlantic Wall, is about to become something far less amusing. Within moments, this strange weapon will hurl a 40-pound projectile barely 100 yards, and where it lands, reinforced concrete that has withstood naval bombardment and aerial bombing will simply cease to exist. Few of the men waiting ashore that morning understood exactly what they were witnessing. Fewer still would have guessed that this ungainly mortar, mounted on a lumbering Churchill tank, was about to solve one of the most stubborn problems of the entire invasion. A problem born 2 years earlier, on a beach in France where everything had gone catastrophically wrong. That earlier beach was Dieppe. On the 19th of August 1942, some 6,000 Allied troops, most of them Canadian, stormed ashore in a raid intended to test German coastal defenses and seize a French port, however briefly. The raid was a disaster. Within hours, over 3,000 men were killed, wounded, or captured. Tanks became stranded on shingle beaches never designed for tracked vehicles. Troops advancing towards the town found themselves trapped beneath concrete pillboxes and sea walls that ordinary infantry weapons could not touch. Engineers carrying explosive charges by hand were cut down before they reached their targets. The lesson, however brutally learned, was unambiguous. Any future invasion of occupied Europe would require a way to destroy fortified positions quickly from a distance, without exposing soldiers to withering fire. Existing tank guns, designed to kill enemy armor, lacked the explosive punch to crack thick reinforced concrete. Standard demolition charges required men to physically place them against a bunker wall, an act that at Dieppe had proved close to suicidal. British planners, already anticipating a return to France, faced a hard engineering truth. They needed a weapon capable of delivering a devastating explosive charge at short range, mounted on something armored enough to survive the approach. Nothing in the British arsenal came close to meeting that requirement, and the clock, with an invasion now inevitable, was running. The answer emerged from an unlikely lineage. Years earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Stewart Blacker, an eccentric and inventive artillery officer, had designed the Blacker Bombard, a crude spigot mortar rushed into service with the Home Guard during the invasion scare of 1940. It worked on a startlingly simple principle. Rather than firing a shell down a conventional barrel, a metal rod, the spigot was driven forward by a propellant charge and struck the tail of a hollow-fin bomb, flinging it towards a target. No heavy barrel was needed, which meant a far larger, heavier warhead could be thrown than a gun of similar size and weight could manage. Engineers at the Ministry of Defense's Clandestine Weapons Section, MD1, recognized the potential and set about scaling the idea up dramatically. Working alongside researchers at Imperial Chemical Industries' Ardeer works in Ayrshire, with a project earned the nickname Ardeer Aggie, they developed a far larger spigot mortar capable of hurling a demolition bomb weighing some 40 pounds, its bulbous shape immediately earning the Flying Dustbin nickname among the crews who would fire it. This became the Petard, mounted on a modified Churchill infantry tank and designated the AVRE, Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers. The Churchill's thick armor, originally intended to survive the trenches of a future continental war, made it ideally suited to close the gap. The mortar itself had a maximum range of little more than 100 yards, and reloading was hazardous in the extreme. The co-driver had to slide open his hatch and physically push each bomb into the muzzle by hand, briefly exposed to enemy fire with every shot. It was a crude, dangerous, entirely improvised solution. It also worked with startling effectiveness. These vehicles fell under the command of Major General Percy Hobart's 79th Armored Division, whose fleet of unconventional specialist tanks became known affectionately as Hobart's Funnies. On the beaches of Normandy, AVREs advanced alongside flail tanks, clearing mines and bridge-laying vehicles, targeting the concrete strongpoints that had proved so lethal at Dieppe. Where infantry alone would have stalled beneath machine gun fire, a single well-placed flying dustbin could crack open a bunker in seconds, its crew of Royal Engineers dismounting afterwards to finish demolition work with hand-placed charges. Records suggest the weapon proved particularly valuable at Sword and Gold beaches, where German strongpoints threatened to hold up the advance inland. If you're enjoying this journey through history, subscribing genuinely helps us continue bringing remarkable true stories like this to the channel. No other Allied nation fielded quite this solution. American forces relied more heavily on naval gunfire, engineered demolition teams, and improvised methods such as the Cullen hedgerow cutter, rather than a dedicated bunker-busting tank. The Germans, for their part, later developed the Sturmtiger, a formidably armored assault gun firing a 380mm rocket-propelled projectile designed for urban demolition, though it arrived too late and in far smaller numbers, with barely 20 ever built, to influence the battle for France. The Petard's genius lay not in raw power, but in proportion, a weapon precisely scaled to the specific tactical problem of coastal concrete, mounted on armor that could survive getting close enough to use it. The wider consequences of Hobart's Funnies remain genuinely significant, if narrower than sometimes claimed. Historians continue to debate how far specialized armor alone shaped the outcome at each individual beach, since terrain, planning, and German dispositions varied considerably along the invasion front. What is not disputed is that Allied casualties on the beaches where these vehicles operated proved markedly lighter than at Dieppe, and that the AVRE concept, however improvised its origins, demonstrated a new principle in mechanized warfare. Purpose-built engineering vehicles, integrated directly into the assault, rather than treated as an afterthought. Surviving Churchill AVREs can still be seen today at the Tank Museum in Bovington and the Musée du Débarquement in Normandy, their strange stub-nosed turrets a permanent reminder of that improvised solution. That gray morning on Sword Beach, then, was not simply another moment of chaos in a war already full of them. It was the answer to Dieppe, arriving 2 years late but precisely on time, mounted on an ungainly tank nobody would have called elegant. The men who built it were not glamorous inventors chasing glory. They were engineers solving an urgent, deadly problem with whatever materials and ingenuity they had at hand. The Flying Dustbin never won the war alone, and no honest history would claim that it did. But on the beaches where concrete had once seemed unbreakable, it broke concrete anyway. And it did so because a handful of engineers refused to accept that the lesson of Dieppe would go unanswered. Sometimes history's most consequential weapons are not the most powerful ones, but the most precisely aimed at the exact obstacle standing in humanity's way.